Howdy ho. On this video, which is one of the first 4 I will be releasing on my channel, I'm building this zipper table. I got the idea from watching John Malecki's videos. I strongly recommend watching his videos. I'm using Finnish maple on this one, and the small pieces are made out of walnut. So like with my few other builds as well, I started when I still didn't have a workshop, so I was building everything outside, and I actually, well, I didn't do this whole table outside, but I got pretty far before I actually got the workshop, so it is possible to build this technically more demanding project as well without a proper workshop. After cutting the pieces into roughly the right size, it was time to do something about the cupping, because as you can see from this clip here, the slabs were pretty badly cupped, so I needed to work on that one before getting ahead with my project. For flattening, I'm using my do-it-yourself jig, but before going there I need to shim the corners to roughly the same height so that I don't end up taking up too much of material out. I think I mentioned it on some of my other videos as well. I'm sure my neighbors really loved me because I normally worked with these in the evenings, and you know the sound you get from a router, so yeah, I think they are quite happy, like I am as well, that I have a workshop now. With the other board flattened, it was time to do the same thing for the other one, so I end up with 2 uniform slabs. If anyone ever says that you can't do woodworking while it's snowing outside, sure you can. But I really like the grain and the pattern on these slabs. It's kind of a special pieces. The reason why I'm working outside, yeah, you can see it from this shot here. So this is the storage and all the room I have indoors, so everything I do needed to be done outside. For filling the knot holes with epoxy, I need to tape the bottom of the slab so that it wouldn't leak. It still did a bit, but it wasn't too bad. This won't be a river table build, so I don't really need epoxy that much. I'm only mixing enough so that I can fill the knot holes and other voids and cracks that are on the slabs. Even when working with small amounts of epoxy, I still try to keep the normal standards and mix it at least 3 minutes. And I did dye it black because I think it will look nice when I have the contrast of this pretty white or pale wood with the black epoxy filling the cracks and voids. A lot of my inspiration and learnings actually come from watching Blacktail Studios videos and also attending the workshop that they sell or he sells on the website. So I think the idea for using these syringes for pushing in epoxy to these small knots and holes came from Cam as well. I was able to put the camera pretty close, so I actually enjoy this footage, just watching the epoxy going here and filling that hole there. So I don't know, maybe there's something wrong with me, but it's fun to watch. Fun part is over, time to sand. Well, not really. I've mentioned it a couple of times in my other videos, but I actually enjoy sanding. The only thing here, I was using belt sander and I really don't have the skills for it, so made a couple of mistakes with it, but yeah, I managed to get it in pretty good shape. For the small pieces of wood I need for the zipper look, I'm using a leftover piece of my walnut slab that I used for the simple coffee table build. So basically I just cut the remaining slab piece to these small blocks that I can then glue between the slabs. With these pieces cut, then comes the hard part, for me at least. And that is to somehow cut the holes needed for actually insetting these pieces between the slabs. As mentioned, I got inspiration from watching John Maleki's video, but yeah, he didn't go to all the details how this is done. So I tried drilling the holes. I tried to use my handheld router with a very simple jig, but eventually I built this different kind of jig that I think was the easiest to use for me. Didn't take too much skill with the router then to make the holes. As I'm a noob, I still made a mistake of taking out too much material at one go, which ended up the wood splitting quite badly, which I needed to fix on later phase. During this phase there was a break for me not building this for a while, because I actually rented out the proper workshop and moved all my stuff in, so all the parts from this point onwards will be actually built inside, which was quite nice change for me. As you can see from this clip, my router actually left these rounded corners to the hole, so I needed to use chisels to make the shape where I can actually fit the block and glue them up. And prior to this, to be honest, I don't think I ever actually used a chisel for anything before, so all the stuff I'm doing here is very, very new for me. I would say the quality was not good, not bad, not great, something in between. So I needed to apply the sawdust and wood glue trick to fill in some of the holes that were left. I've seen a few different techniques for doing this, so not really sure which one is best. I chose to do it this way, so just mix it first and then apply to the holes where I needed to apply to. But not sure, maybe it could be better to use some other technique, for example putting the sawdust first into the holes and then glue and then using sander, because I've seen that work quite nicely as well. Having said that, after all was said and done and sanded out, I think the end result was actually pretty okay. I was pleased with how it looked like. Basically I did the same process for every single piece, so I just mixed more and more of this self-made filler and filled in the holes. So after gluing a few pieces already together, I figured out that I'm an idiot because I forgot to clean up the edge, so then I needed to do it here, which was much more complex now that I had stuff on my way. This here is one of the problems I mentioned with using the router and taking too much material with it. A big piece of the wood chipped out, and the way I decided to fix it was to take an even bigger part away and find a replacement piece that matches the grain pattern and glue it in. The end result turned out okay, as you can see in later parts of this video. The glue line is still visible and the grain pattern is not 100% match, but if you're really not looking you won't see it in the finished table, so I'm actually very happy how it turned out. On the videos of more experienced woodworkers, they always seem to tell that everybody makes mistakes. It's just about how good you are in actually hiding and fixing your mistakes. So I'm sure this fix could have been done a gazillion times better in many ways, but this was my first ever, so would I do it differently the next time? Yeah, probably. At least I think I would actually sand the surfaces to be very flat. Now they were kind of uneven, so I needed to use a lot of glue to fill in the voids. But it's the end result that matters. So after sanding and using this filler on that glue line as well, it turned out okay. Now I'm just gluing up the last blocks to their places, and then it's time to start sanding it. And sanding was actually something I was really waiting for, because as you see now it looks pretty awful. There's the fix I applied and there's the filler all over the place, so I had high hopes that sanding it out would actually salvage the part. With new workshop I also bought new tools, and this was the first time I actually used the Festool Road Extender. That turned out to be one of my favorite tools in the shop. Even though I had lots of material to take out, as you can see, it went surprisingly quickly and I really liked the end result. And for some reason I still enjoy sanding. Everybody always says that they hate sanding, but for me, I don't know, maybe in this case as well, because it really kind of saves the project. That's why I still like it. I sanded to 180 grit, and then it actually is time to start applying the finish on the table. I'm using Rubio monocoat, and before applying the finish I'm using the cleaner that they also sell. Using this cleaner is a very simple process, so just apply it on rag and then just wipe out your pieces with it, and then wait roughly 1 hour for the table to dry, and then you can work with the finish that you have. Prior to this, I've never actually used any other finish than Rubio monocoat, so cannot really compare it to anything else, but it is very easy to apply. It seems to give a nice sheen and look for the wood, so I'm happy with it, but eventually I will be trying out different finishes, but the process I'm using here is a pretty standard one. So first apply it with whatever you have, and then I'm using this buffer to actually get the edges, because earlier I did have problems with the finish dripping over the edge and leaving marks, so that's why I'm now doing the edges with this tool that I'm using here. And I am finishing both sides at the same time. So first I did the bottom, and after wiping it off, or wiping the excess off as following the instructions, I immediately actually do the top side as well, so that there won't be any difference in capturing the moisture. Then the tabletop was pretty much done. There was still one more thing left to be done, but that will be later on this video. So technically this table was very difficult to build for me, because it introduced so many new techniques that I had never done. And then I decided to build the table legs myself as well, my very first legs to be built ever. So some challenges were to be expected, and yes, I had them. One thing to note is that I don't have a jointer, so I needed to use the sled on my planer to actually get this lumber milled up. Then I used my table saw to cut the pieces into proper width, and at this point I'm not very experienced table saw user. I know I shouldn't be using long sleeved shirts, and probably my position and everything leaves room for improvement, but I'm getting better. And now bring in the hate as I take out my Festool domino for the first time ever. So why did I buy the domino? Even though it is crazy expensive, it's also very easy to learn how to use, and it really helps with aligning the table legs and everything with this kind of glue up. So I understand the critique about the price, but as a tool it is actually very nice to use. I chose to do a 5-degree angle on these table legs. Afterwards thinking could have done more, maybe 7 or 8, but this is what I chose and this is what I built. Then starts the glue ups, and here is where my design is actually different than on the video by John Malecki. So on his table you could actually see the table legs from the gap between the slabs. I didn't want that to happen, so I made up my own design, and it caused a bit of a problem to me. Partly because my chop saw wasn't configured correctly. It actually did slightly angled cuts, and it caused a lot of problems for this build. So due to that, the structure of my table leg build was a bit crooked, and I needed these extra support pieces, those 2x4s, to support it in a correct place, and even the final finished version is a bit misaligned, which is a problem only when reattaching the legs to the base. So it's not perfect, but it still works. Obviously from the final build I did remove those 2x4s. They are here just to keep it in a proper place before I attach it to the table. During my sanding process I misplaced my camera a bit, and there you actually see it going to the floor and breaking, which wasn't too nice. Whoops. I am using a different camera, and there is a bit of a focus issue with it, so bear with me. Now this step could be completely useless or not. Due to the fact that I had issues with building this table legs, and I need to kind of force it in place when attaching it to the tabletop, I decided to add pocket screws to some of the joints that will be mainly affected by it, but as mentioned, I don't really know if it makes a difference or not. For an actual paying customer I would rebuild it, but as this is for personal use I chose to keep it, and at least it's been working fine. None of the joints have failed so far. Like with the tabletop, I'm using the same process for finishing the table legs, so first using the cleaner and then applying Rubio monocoat with a rag, and then buffing the excess off. So as I mentioned before, this table introduced many new techniques for me. It's been a very challenging build. It's been a fun build as well, but I mean I've had my fair share of issues, and right here I'm doing something for the first time ever as well, which is actually using threaded inserts for attaching the legs to the table. So that part wasn't too bad, to be honest. The only thing was that I needed to clamp and force this table legs to the position where it will be attached into, because as I mentioned it was slightly crooked to the problems I talked about earlier. But I managed to do it, so I was happy, and here you see me flipping the table with pure skill. I don't know. Yeah, sometimes it would be nice to have someone help out in the workshop. There it is, standing on the legs I built, and the table legs not visible from the gap, which was one of my goals. So, and for some reason I'm touching the table a lot here. It will be even more fun to touch after I apply this carbon method ceramic coating on the table. Nowadays I use N3 by Blacktail Studios, but when I was building this out they didn't ship internationally yet, so I chose back then to use carbon method. I will not go through the whole process how to apply it. Basically it takes about 2 days to completely finish the table with these nano coatings, and I recommend watching Blacktail Studios videos and instructions how to apply it, but the process is simple. Apply maybe 3 coats of the hard coat, and then you wait for 1 day, and then you apply the top coat depending how much sheen you want, 2 or more coats, and then it's basically done. And why am I using this stuff? Well, I think the clip here actually shows how well the table is protected once you have applied this kind of ceramic coating on a table. So obviously it is completely optional. This is an extra layer of protection that you don't have to do, but I think it makes sense when you build proper tables. You protect them as well as you can. With that, thanks for watching, and if you liked the video, please subscribe.